Okay, this one matters. Donut finally left the lab bench. For weeks, the whole Donut Lab story has lived in single-cell land. Fast charge, hot discharge, self-discharge. One narrow VTT report after another. Each one real enough to keep the story alive. Each one small enough to keep the biggest argument alive too. Now they've shown something different. A real battery pack, in a real motorcycle, charging at over 100 kilowatts, air-cooled, 10 to 50% in 5 minutes, 80% in 12. That is not nothing. That is not a slide deck. That is not a fake render with dramatic music and some poor intern whispering, "Revolution," into a wind machine. It is a real engineering result. And that is exactly why the question gets sharper, not softer. Because if Donut can finally show a pack doing something real, then why does every update still feel like it stops 1 inch before the proof that would end the argument? That's the episode. Not, are they frauds? Too lazy. Not, is it all real? Too worshipful. The better question is, what kind of proof strategy is this? Because the pattern is getting weird in a very specific way. They keep proving the most photogenic parts first. Fast charging, extreme heat, 10-day self-discharge. Now pack-level charging. All of it interesting, all of it helpful, all of it belief-building. And somehow, the two claims that would actually make this battery absurd remain standing in the fog like uncontacted aliens. 400 watt-hours per kilogram, 100,000 cycles. Those are the receipts that would make the whole industry sit up straight and spill its coffee. Those are also the receipts that still haven't faced adult supervision. So this is not a gotcha video, it's a scoreboard. What Donut has really proven, what it has only suggested, and why every new demo seems to answer one criticism while carefully walking around the biggest ones. Chapter 1. Donut finally left the bench. Let's start with what changed. The latest update is the first real move from cell behavior to system behavior. And that matters because packs are where battery dreams go to meet consequences. A cell is one thing. A pack is wiring, thermal paths, controls, packaging, cell interaction, and all the ugly little ways a nice lab result can turn into a mediocre product. So yes, this new Verge motorcycle result deserves more respect than another lonely pouch cell on a test rig. An 18 kilowatt hour air-cooled pack sustaining over 100 kilowatts for 5 minutes is a real milestone. 10 to 50% in 5 minutes, 70% in just over 9, 80% in 12, starting around room temperature in an actual chassis. That is real progress. And it matters even more because Donut's earlier proof strategy was so cell-focused. First came the fast charge result, then the high temperature result, then the self-discharge result. And to Donut's credit, those were not imaginary wins. The self-discharge report alone showed one cell holding on to 97.7% of its charged capacity after 10 days idle, which was a clean answer to the "it's secretly a supercapacitor" accusation. So this is not one of those stories where the company has shown literally nothing. That phase is over. They have shown things. The problem is now more interesting than that. The problem is sequencing. Because when you line these releases up, a pattern emerges. Every report proves something real. Every report builds a little more credibility. And every report seems to focus on the claims that the battery world can look at and say, okay, unusual maybe, impressive maybe, but still within the borders of known engineering. That's the tension. Impressive is not the same as revolutionary. A battery startup can survive a long time on impressive. Revolutionary is the part that has to survive contact with weight, volume, cycle life, cost, manufacturing, and the merciless physics goblin that lives inside every pack design. And that is why this new pack demo is so interesting. It strengthens the donut story. It does not finish it.
Chapter 2. The pattern is the story.
Now we get to the actual pattern. And this is where the episode becomes useful beyond donut itself. Because this is really a lesson in how breakthrough companies build belief. Step 1. Prove the eye-catching things that are easy to show on camera. Fast charging is great for this. Heat tolerance is great for this. A 10-day self-discharge plot is nerdy, but still clean and legible. And now a motorcycle pack sucking down triple-digit kilowatts at a charger? Beautiful! That's catnip. The demos are real enough to matter. They're visual enough to travel. And they answer criticism one slice at a time. That is smart. It is also selective. And selective validation is not automatically bad. Sometimes that is exactly what a careful company should do. Prove one thing, then the next, then the next. Build trust brick by brick, instead of dropping one giant claim and disappearing into the vapor. Best case, that's what this is. But there is a darker version of the same pattern. A company can also prove the parts that are easiest to make look good, while the commercial heart of the claim stays just out of frame. That's the version people are reacting to now. Because look at the sequence. Fast charging? Yes, they've got something. Heat behavior? Yes, weird enough to be interesting. Self-discharge? Yes, the supercap theory took a real hit there. Pack-level charging? Yes, now we finally have a system-level result. And yet, the mountain in the background has not moved. Where is the independent density proof? Where is the serious cycle life data? Where is the adult version of the pack test, preferably third-party, with mass, volume, repeatability, and no cinematic fog machine set to trust me? That's why the title tension works. Donut Labs keeps proving the easy parts. Not easy as in trivial, easy as in easier than the claims that would actually rewrite the battery industry. Fast charge is hard. Air-cooled 100 kilowatt pack charging is hard. But a truly pack-relevant 400 watt-hour per kilogram reality? That's harder. 100,000 cycles without the whole thing aging like milk in sunlight? Much harder. So the pattern is the story now. Not did they show anything, they did. The story is, why does every update feel like a real step forward that still stops just before the hardest proof?
Chapter 3. The hardest proofs still missing.
Let's talk about the missing receipts, because this is where the adult conversation lives. Receipt number 1, energy density. This is the biggest one. The whole donut mythos went nuclear because of the density claim. 400 watt-hours per kilogram is the kind of number that makes engineers either lean in or physically recoil. And despite all the VTT cell reports and now this pack-level teaser, we still do not have the simple, devastatingly boring proof that would move the needle most. What does the thing weigh? What volume does it occupy? At the cell level and at the pack level. That's it. You don't need incense. You need a scale. And this is why the 18 kilowatt hour pack is both meaningful and frustrating. Meaningful because it's the first real pack move. Frustrating because if they had shown the roughly 30 kilowatt hour version inside that same motorcycle context, it would have said much more about actual packaging achievement and volumetric credibility. Receipt number 2, cycle life. This is the monster. A battery that charges fast, behaves sanely at heat, holds charge over 10 days, and still dies young is not a revolution. It is an impressive prototype with a tragic future. 100,000 cycles is such a gigantic claim that everything else becomes secondary until that one starts getting real data behind it. And right now, it doesn't have that. Receipt number 3, independent pack level validation. This latest update matters, but it is still a sneak peek, not a VTT report, not a standardized third-party pack test in the same spirit as the earlier cell work. And that distinction matters because once a story gets hot, company-captured footage starts doing a lot of emotional labor. You want the next step to be boring, independent, repeatable, slightly disappointing in its cinematography, and devastating in its clarity. That's what real validation looks like. So if you're trying to keep your head straight, the checklist is pretty simple. Pack mass, pack volume, cycle life curves, third-party pack testing, and maybe, just maybe, a timeline that survives contact with the calendar. Because eventually, every battery startup faces the same test. Can you graduate from "that demo was cool" to "the spreadsheet just ruined my ability to dismiss you"? Donut is not there yet, but they're close enough to make the story worth watching. And that is why this is still dangerous territory.
Chapter 4, Breakthrough or Demo Theater.
So where does that leave us? Best case, they're real. The staged rollout is deliberate. They're building trust carefully, proving one thing at a time, and the bigger receipts are coming once they're ready to survive scrutiny. In that version of the story, all this selective validation looks smart in hindsight. Annoying, yes, but smart. Most likely, the cells really do have genuine strengths, and Donut is proving the easiest commercial wins first while walking around the hardest proof until they have something sturdier to show. That version would still be a big deal. It just means the miracle is smaller than the myth. Worst case, the demos are real enough to build belief, real enough to survive headlines, real enough to keep hope alive, but the revolutionary claims collapse the second density, lifetime, manufacturing, and scale face proper adult supervision. That's the knife edge, and that's why my posture here is neither worship nor dismissal. It's scoreboard thinking. The new pack update is the most meaningful Donut release so far because it finally leaves the bench. But the pattern is the real story. Every update proves something interesting while the biggest claims remain untouched. That does not make the company fake. It does not make the company vindicated. It makes the company legible. And once a company becomes legible, you stop arguing like a fan or a hater and start asking better questions. What got proven? What stayed unproven? What would force an update? For me, the answer is simple. Independent pack validation, measured density, early cycle life data that does not instantly turn into interpretive dance. Until then, this remains one of the most fascinating battery stories on the internet. Not because nothing is real, but because enough is real to keep the argument alive while the biggest proof still refuses to walk on stage. That is a much more interesting plot than either obvious fraud or world-changing confirmed. Signal over hype. Subscribe to join the expedition.